Continue today with the 8th chapter of the book of Judges. We're in the middle of the time period of Gidon. Gidon is just led the Jewish people in a great victory against the enemies, the Midianites, who had been conquered them for a very lengthy period of time, and they've just killed the kings. But if you remember, and this is where the starting off point, that's why we're starting here, is that Gidon initially had 32,000 soldiers, and it was whittled down by God to only 300. And later, after the initial sort of victory and the panic that came into the camp, then he called the people of Naphtali, the people of Asher, the people of Ephraim back into wage war with him. And that's where the chapter begins. So we're beginning chapter 8, verse 1. That's a little introduction, just so we remember. Vayomru elav ish Ephraim. So the men of Ephraim approach Gidon. They say, Ma hadavar hadazeh asher asinu lanu levilti karot lanu ki alachti lechem b'mijan v'yirivun ito bechozka. What did you do to us? Why didn't you call us to fight war against the Midianites? We wanted to fight war. These were our enemies. Vayomer lahem ma'asiti ata kolchem. He said, and he said to them, what do you mean? I didn't do anything compared to you. Halov tov ololot Ephraim mivitzir Aviezer. Aren't the gleanings of Ephraim better than Aviezer's vintage? He's from Menashe. He's from Aviezer. They are Ephraim. They're safer, in fact, called ololot Ephraim. And he's saying to them, what you did was greater than me. How is this? Well, look in verse 3. Bi'etchem natan Elohim et zarei mijan et orei v'etze'ev u'ma yacholti asot kachem. Azrafta ruchamai alav bidabro hadavar hazeh. Said, you guys were the ones who killed the kings, the generals, Orev and Zev, the raven and the wolf, the guys with the big names. Maybe they had pagan hats on, who knows? You were the ones who God delivered the true victory towards. And we know that Gidon isn't just sort of making this up. He's smart, he's Machiavellian, he's deliberate, he knows what to say to appease them, and it works. Their anger abates them. But we know there's truth to that from the story of Devorah. Barak and Devorah led the Jewish people in battle, but when Barak asked Devorah to come along with him, she says, the glory won't be with you, it will be with a woman. Well, Barak's the general, leads them in battle, but the true glory goes to the person who cuts off the head of the spider, the person who killed the general Sisera, and therefore here too, what Gidon is saying to them is, I may have led the majority of the battle, but the true victory came about through you guys, because you guys killed their general. Continuing in verse 4, we see here Gidon very smart, able to pacify the people, knows what to say, and so he has this great leadership quality. Verse 4, Vayavo Gidon hayardena, over hu shlosh meot ha'ish asher ito, ayefim virotfim. Gidon came to the Jordan and crossed it. The 300 men with him were famished, but still in pursuit. Vayomer la'amei Sukkot, and they said to the men of Sukkot, Tnu na ki karot lechem la'am asher b'ragla. He said, give loaves of bread to the people who are with me. Ki ayafimhem vanochi rodef achrei zevach b'tzalmuna malchei Midian. Says, feed these people because we are pursuing the Zevach and Salmuna, two of the Midianite kings. Vayomer sarei Sukkot, hachaf Zevach v'tzalmuna ta b'yadcha. Are Zevach and Salmuna already in your hands? Ki nitein l'tzivacha lachem, that we should give bread to your troops, meaning when you guys have succeeded, when you've defeated the Midianite kings, then we'll give you food. But until then, you're nothing. Vayomer Gidon lachein b'teit Adonai Zevach v'tzalmuna b'yadi v'dashti et b'sarchem et kotzei hamidbar v'et habar kanim. I swear, he says, when God delivers Zevach and Salmuna in my hands, I will thresh your bodies upon the desert thorns and briers. You are not supporting our fight. You are not supporting our attempt to get the Midianites away from us. And this is what's happening. You guys are going to pay for, he doesn't say if I am victorious. He says, when I am victorious. Vayal Misham Penuel. He went from there to Penuel. As you say here, these are places that we have mentioned much earlier regarding the person that we're reading about in the weekly Torah portions now. Yaakov is the one who builds Sukkot. Yaakov calls the place Penuel, Ki Ra'iti Panim. And it's actually this week's parsha, all these things. Vayidaber Aleim Kazot. So he goes to Penuel and he says to the people in Penuel, And the people of Pnuel also say, we're not giving you anything. When you're victorious, then come and ask us. When I return back in peace, then I am going to tear down this tower. And that words as well, Beshuvi v'shalom, sounds a lot like what Yaakov says in the back of beginning of Parsha Vayetze, when he says to God after he says, and if you bring me home, Beshuvi v'shalom, but if you just give me, then v'haya Hashem li lelokim. So it's interesting. I don't know what to make of it. Further thought that there seem to be a lot of references here to Yaakov Avi. V'zevach v'tzalmuna b'karkar. Continuing in verse 10. Umachnei mimam chamesh eser elef kol anotarim mikol machnei bnei kedav anoflim mea v'esrim elef ish sholev cherev. Now Zevach and Salmuna were at Karkor. They still had 15,000 soldiers that remained with them, because 120,000 had been killed. Vayal Gidon derech hashchunei va'ohalim, and Gidon marched up to the road of the tent dwellers, mikedem lanovach vayigba, which is between up near Nevach and Yagba, two different places. Maybe it's a place up on a hill. It's called Gibbaha, sounds like Gavoha. Vayachet hamachaneh v'machaneh haya betach, and he routed the camp, which had been secure. But the two kings are further running away from them after he attacks their camp and destroys much of their camp. And finally, not surprisingly, and he captures the two kings of Midjan, and the whole camp of the Midjan is again into panic. We talked about this word chared multiple times. The fear, Gidon is scared. He has this unwillingness. He keeps asking God for signs. There's a lot of related to fear and a lack of assurance in these chapters with Gidon. And here it's gone. The charada, the fear and the worry that Gidon had because Bnei Yisrael were being abused and being subjugated by the Midianites has now shifted fully to the Midianites. Bnei Yisrael are in control. They are no longer the ones who are charedim. Vayashav Gidon ben Yoash min hamachaneh mimala hachechares. And Gidon comes back from the camp, and he's in a place, the hills of Cheres. Vayilkod na'ar me'anshei Sukkot vayishalehu. And he captures a boy, finds a young man from the people of Sukkot, and he starts asking him questions. Vayichtov elav et sarei Sukkot v'tziknea shivim v'shiva ish. And this boy gives him the list of who all the important people in Sukkot are, all of the leaders of the town. Who are those people? He starts to give Gidon the list, 77 important men. Vayavo el anshe Sukkot vayomer hine zevach v'tzalmuna asher cheraftem oti lemor hachav zevach v'tzalmuna ta biyadecha ki nitain la'anashecha yafim lachem. He says, here are Zevach and Salmuna, whom you mocked me, and who you said, are they with you that we should give you bread? Which I guess they were right, because they didn't need, Gidon and his men didn't need the bread. They managed to capture Zevach and Salmuna without them. But it still was not the right thing to do. And he took the elders of the city, and he brought thorns from the desert, and sticks and spears, Vayodaba hemet anshe Sukkot, and he punished the people of Sukkot with them. Vet migdal Pnuel natatz by haroget anshe ha'ir, and Pnuel he tore down its tower. He killed the townspeople. So here we see Gidon. It sounds a little sick, but at the same time, what is he doing? He is in control. There will be no dissent. You don't have to come to battle. Not everybody in Israel needs to come to battle, but you have to support the war effort. Vayomer, and finally turns to these two kings of Midjan. Vayomer el Zevach v'el Salmuna, Eifo anashim asher haragtem b'Tavor. Where are the men that you killed in Tavor? Vayomru kamocha kamohem echad ketor b'nei Elimelech. And they look just like you, they replied, like the sons of a king. So we don't know about exactly, who it's referring to, but it makes it sound like there are some other people who these kings of Midjan killed. And what the kings of Midjan say is they look like you. And that's what Gidon says. Vayomer achai b'nei imihe chai Adonai lu hachayitem otam lo haragti etchem. He says they were They were my brothers. They were the sons of my mother. And if you had not killed them, then I would not take revenge and kill you. And so Gidon is saying here, I don't know if it makes it sound like the kings of Midian killed members of his family. Who knows if this is when Gidon was first starting to revolt. We're not clear exactly when this was, if it was just part of the basic subjugation that was going on in earlier periods. But obviously, there was something that happened to Gidon's family from the Midianites, and now he's going to take his revenge. Vayomer leYeter bechoro, and he said to Yeter, his oldest son, Kum harogotam, go and kill them. Velo shalaf hanar charbo ki arei ki oden anar. But the boy, he was unwilling. He was timid. He was scared. He did not want to draw his sword. He was still a king. Vayomer zevach v'tzalmuna kum atau pgabanu ki chaish gvurata. It sounds like, some sort of the action movie or whatever. What do they say to him? Come slay us yourself, for your strength comes with manhood. And part of what they're saying is right. We don't want to have your young son. We don't know how young he is, who's not so strong, and he's he's stabbing us 50 times because he can't kill us. Just come here and slit our throats and put an end to it so we're not tortured. And it's also sort of this idea here is, if we're going to be killed, the kings of Midian, we want to be killed by somebody of great prestige. We want to be killed by you, Gidon, the leader of the army of Bnei Yisrael. Now, Gidon is not unwilling to comply. And we're still in the middle of 21. Vayakam Gidon vayarog et zevach b'tzalmuna vayikach et saharnim asher b'tzavrei gmalehem. So Gidon killed them, and he took the crescents that were on their camels, some signs of who they were. Vayomer Yisrael Gidon. Okay, and so this is just one sec. So Gidon does this, and one thing just to point out here in this verse is right. Gidon wants his son to kill the king, the kings of Midian. And back in verse 18, when Zevach and Salmuna answer him, and they say, "Oh, those men we killed at Tabor, they look like you," and they said that back to him, like the sons of a king. They look like you, and they look like the sons of a king, implying that Gidon is like royalty. I say that to you. And now let's go back to verse 22. Vayomru ish Yisrael Gidon, Mishal banu gamata, gam bincha, gam ben bincha, ki hoshatanu miyad Midian. We have something here that we haven't seen with the previous tribes, with the previous shoftim, judges, which is Bnei Yisrael now approach this judge, Gidon. They hadn't done this in the past. And they say to him, we want you to rule over us. We want you to become our king. We want a dynasty, you and then your son and then your grandson. We've seen his son doesn't yet have the bravery that Gidon has. Maybe he'll grow into the position, but they want Gidon, who's been told that he looks like he should be a king, like he's a king by his enemies, by the kings of Midian. And what does Gidon say to them? Vayomer Elohim Gidon. Gidon says to them, Eshalem mikem she'ela utnu li ish nezem shivalo. I have a request. I have a question to ask each of you. Give me an earring, each one of you who received, some sort of loot, some sort of booty. Because nizmeza havlam kishmaelimhe. They had to get this because the Midianites were related to the Ishmaelites, and therefore they had golden earrings. I guess that was some of a feature that was worn by people then. We know the people wear gold earrings today as well. Vayomru naton nitain, and they said certainly. Vayifrusu et hasimla vayashlichu shama ish nezem shlala, and everyone took off one of their gold earrings that they got from the war, and they throw it onto the cloth. The weight came to 1,700 shekels of gold. It sounds like more than a little golden nugget. Levad min hasar honim v'hanitifot uvigdei ha'argaman sha'al malchei Midian. And this was addition to the crescents, the pendants, the purple robes that Gidon got from Zevach and Salmuna. Ulevad min ha'anakot asher b'tzavrei gam aleihen. And in addition to the collars on the necks of their camels, which were presumably studded, they were all it was bling bling, as they say. Vayaso to Gidon le'ephod, and Gidon made an ephod out of it. Vayatsego to v'ira ba'ofra, vayiznu chol Yisrael acharav sham vayhi leGidon uleveito lemokesh. And Gidon goes, and he goes, and what he does is he makes an ephod out of it, and it becomes something that is idolatrous. It becomes something that is worshipped by them. Now, I made a mistake here. My apologies. I missed a verse, which was important. Let me go back to 23. I'm sorry about that. We skipped 23. Next time, help me out. Point it out to me. We're going back, and then we'll come back to this. So I'm sorry to those who are listening also. In 22, they asked him to be the king. I scrolled back to 18 so you would see that he had been named a king. And in 23, he says to them, he said, I will not rule over you, nor shall my son rules over you. The Lord shall rule over you. At that point, Gidon looks like the best. That's why God didn't want 32,000 soldiers. He wanted 300. God said, the people are going to think they won it out of their own strength. That's not how they're winning it. They're winning the battle because I am leading them in battle. I'm the one that are allowing them to defeat this army that's so much greater than them. At that point, Gidon looks amazing. That's exactly what God keeps saying to them over and over again, back in the book of Dvarim, back in the book of Yoshua. So Yoshua keeps telling Bnei Israel, and Moshe keeps warning them. You have to remember, it's not, as we said yesterday, kochi va'otzem yadi. It's not my strength and my power which won these victories. It was God who helped us win these victories. That's what Gidon says to them. And then something strange happens in the verses we just read, which is Gidon collects all of their gold and all of their and other things, and he makes this idolatrous thing. And Bnei Israel, they start to worship it. And it's really, really puzzling as to how this happens. After moments, right? It seems almost right away that after they tell him to be king, he says, no, I'm not going to be king. And then he makes this idolatrous object. Now, we don't know if it's fully idolatrous, and there seems to be sort of, allusions here as well with the Nizmei Zahav to Aaron and the golden calf, because the golden calf, if we're right, it was the Nizmei Zahav, it was the golden rings there that Aaron collected from Bnei Israel. And it may have been a similar thing where they're saying, we need somebody to be our king. And he's trying to say to them, this is a way through which you should approach God. The same way that Aaron, the golden calf, may have not been full idolatry, it may have been a way through which to originally to approach God. That may have been sort of Aaron's intention when Bnei Israel approached him at that time when they were worried about Moshe. And Gidon here may have had the same intention. However, it doesn't work out. It becomes a mokesh. It becomes a snare for Gidon and his family. And that word mokesh was the word that was used a few chapters earlier when God said to Bnei Israel, you guys didn't do enough. You didn't get rid of your enemies. And now what's going to happen is they are going to be a snare and a trap to you. And because of them, you are not going to prosper. You're going to have problems. And that's what happens with this reversal. Continuing verse 28, Vayichana midjan lifnei bnei Yisrael, v'lo yisufu laseit rosham vatishkat haaretz arba'im shana. So Midjan is subdued. Bnei Yisrael is in charge of them. The land remains tranquil for 40 years. And it seems like everything at this point is going to be okay. This sounds like the end of the story of what we had earlier. Now, there's a little bit of a sad ending, a little bit of disappointment. Again, we don't understand fully his intentions, but Gidon building this ephod. But we're still at a point where, right, we've reached the last point of the cycle. Bnei Israel are victorious, and there's peace for a certain amount of time. Now, unlike the other Shoftim, because there's going to be a continuation story, we're told more about Gidon. Vayelech Yerubal ben Yoash vayeshav bebeito. And Yerubal, the son of Yoash, Yerubal, of course, is the name that was given to Gidon when he destroyed the idolatrous shrine of the Baal in his father's house in the territory of Yoash. He's named Ben Yoash because even though it was his father's initially, if you remember then, 2 chapters ago, his father defended him. His father said, why are you going to kill my son? If Baal and Asherah, if those are really gods, then let them fight their own wars. That's what he said to the people who were angry. And now, and Ve'ula Gidon, and so we're going back and forth from Yerubal to now to Gidon. Hayu shivim banim yotzei recho. He had 70 sons. Kinashim rabot hayulo, because he had many wives. So he may not officially be king, but in some ways, he sounds a lot like a king. If he's got 70 kids, who knows how many wives he has? 5, 8, 10, 20. To make a joke depends on, if he's very devout, very religious, maybe then each wife has 13 kids. But if he's, if he's a more, contemporary person, maybe each wife has only 2 kids. So he's got 35 wives. Who knows how many he has? But it sounds, again, not like the average person. Sounds like he's acting like a king. And in addition to the 70 sons, he has a pilegesh. He has a concubine. When he would go to Shechem, somebody would spend the night with. Yoldalah gam he ben vayasem et shmo Avimelech. She had a son, and he named him Avimelech. And again, here we have who names him Avimelech? Does Gidon name this child Avimelech? Avimelech means my father is the king, which is, Gidon said, I am not the king. God is your king. But then Gidon is sort of acting like the king. He's got all of these wives. He's got Pilegesh. But this is what we'll come back to tomorrow. Vayamot Gidon ben Yoash b'seiva tova. Gidon, the son of Yoash, dies at a ripe old age. Vayikaver b'chever Yoash aviv ba'ofra avi ha'ezri, and he's buried in the tomb of his father in Ofra. Vahi kasher made Gidon vayashuvu b'nei Yisrael vayiznu achrei ha'baalim. No surprise, we're back to the beginning of the cycle. Gidon dies, and now Bnei Yisrael are once again worshiping Baal. Vayasim lem Baal Brit le'Elohim, and they adopted a god called Baal Brit. There are going to be different types of Baals. The most famous one is Baal Zevuv, known in English as Beelzebub, which in the Hebrew it means the Lord of Flies. A Zevuv is a fly. Beelzebub, I'm sure you know the word even outside of Bohemian Rhapsody, whatever it means in that song. But here they're worshiping a different Baal Brit. And once again, Bnei Israel forgot God who delivered them from all the nations around them. And they didn't even show loyalty or kindness to the house of Gidon, even though all of the good that he had done for Israel. What we see here in those last 2 verses is a certain sense that Bnei Israel are ingrates. They are just not able to follow God, and they're not able to continue to support Gidon. And this is a very problematic thing. And once again, we're starting the cycle again. And oh my, I went into major overtime today.